Hello, Carrots here. Welcome to part 18 of my 30 grandchildren badge attempt. This is actually the head of the household badge, but the requirement is to have 30 grandchildren, and that's the goal of this challenge. Now, in the previous episode, Javon and Gwen finally got married. And in this episode, we're going to have a quick look at where they have moved to. We'll also take a moment or two to check out a few of the other things that are going on around town and catch up with Pauline, the imaginary friend who was most recently made real, and the new sim that I made because I was having a lot of problems saving the game, and I thought moving everything to a brand new save would solve that problem, but it didn't. I just had too many sims in the household. However, I did move everybody to the new save in the same world, in the same houses. I shifted everybody in the world, so they've kept all of their friends and relations, but I had to add one new sim to the world so I could unpack all of the sims that I'd packed up using the NRES Porter mod. The world is empty, so I couldn't just grab one of the sims that are already in the world when you first download it. So I made Dell, and I haven't introduced her to anybody yet. We've seen her around town a few times, but we might as well have a look at her. And you haven't had a proper introduction yet to the imaginary friend Pauline, who I've just moved out. So we'll go visit Pauline and Deb in their homes after we've seen through Javon and Gwen's new home, and then we'll go back to the main household and prepare for Robbie and Candice to go on their vacation, which will lead to them getting married towards the end of this episode. Then they'll move out to a house close to where Javon and Gwen are living. This picture is of the entire town population other than the Sims who live in the main household, the Holdens and Javon and Gwen, who've just moved out. So there's not many in the world. Initially they were all single Sims, but story progression has been pairing them up and turning them into couples. And two of the couples have had babies. They were the earliest to be matched by the game. And I have been moving the couples in together. I had a whole lot of Sims living in one household, so I've been putting the couples in together in each of the households. Haven't had any wedding ceremonies. I've just been moving the couples in together in their own homes. Hopefully they'll all have babies eventually. This is Tony McLean with his partner Tracy Burns and their son Myron. Tony is the father of Javon and all of his siblings. Javon and Gwen were a part of the main Holden household, but they have just become man and wife. They're married and they have moved out to become part of the townie population. That money that keeps scrolling up is from the harvestables that Javon consigned at the humble harvest stands at the greenhouse at the end of the previous episode. Hopefully they won't start having babies until all of Javon's siblings have married and moved out. If they do, well then any babies they have together before I start officially producing the 30 grandchildren, those babies will be unlikely to be counted towards the 30 grandchildren. I suspect the game may well produce babies for some of these couples before I'm ready to have the babies that will count. For the babies to count, the active household must always be the household that Javon's mother, Jerry, is living in, and I can never move from Jerry's household during the births of all 30 grandchildren. And on top of that, the game has to be logged into the website for the grandchildren to be counted. And until I've got all of Javon's siblings married and moved out into their own homes, I'm going to be jumping into their new homes to make sure that they're set up for the new couple to live in, thereby ensuring that any grandchildren already born won't count. And I'm not logged in while I'm doing this either, because logging in makes it difficult to play as it has memory issues, and I've got such a massively overstuffed household in the main household at the moment. I don't think the game would run for long if I was trying to play while logged in. But I must be logged in and stay in Jerry's household for the births of all of the 30 grandchildren. I can't leave her household and I can't play not logged in if I want to get the badge. So she could end up with 40 or 50 grandchildren before we get the 30 that count towards the badge. Hopefully though she won't have to have that many, but you never know with this game. Anyway, let's just see them at home. That's Javon's awards he got when he graduated. He was the class valedictorian, and he was also elected as the most likely to have a big family. That's quite possible since he's the first to be married, and he's the most likely to have lots of children before I can start counting them towards the 30 grandchildren. So let's see what happens with this couple throughout the future episodes of this story. They seem to be finding their way around their new home and settling in quite nicely, and they've also found each other, obviously. I hope they enjoyed that little woohoo. Hope it doesn't result in a baby. They obviously both wanted it, that's why they did it. Gwen's gone to cook after she finished the woohoo with Javon. She must have been hungry. I've replaced all of the objects in their kitchens, bathrooms and bedrooms. They've got Elvar vintage fridge and sink, and they've got an expensive stove, and they've got much better quality beds and bathroom fixtures and fittings. So they should sleep well and shower quickly, and they shouldn't burn the house down with that expensive stove, and their hunger should be satisfied fairly quickly with the Elvar vintage fridge. I think I've got just about all of the fridges available in the game, with the exception of the one that is the reward for getting to the top of a culinary career. And the Elvar vintage fridge is not the most expensive fridge, but it does appear to have the highest hunger and environment ratings combined of all of the other fridges, so I tend to use it quite often in my games. Of course, Javon was tired after his woohoo, so he went upstairs for a nap. So that's their bedroom. They've got 3 other bedrooms with bunk beds in each, and there's 2 cribs in their bedroom, so they could possibly have up to 2 toddlers or babies at the same time. So we'll see what the future brings them. This is the remainder of the Holden household. It is Javon's mother, his 14 siblings, and the future spouses of 2 of his siblings. Now we'll meet some of them. This is Jerry, their mother. She's to be the grandmother of 30 babies. This is Robbie and his future spouse Candice. They'll be the next to marry and to move out. This is Alicia with her future spouse Dennis. 5 young adults whose future spouses haven't moved in yet. They are Demetria, Dolores, Wilfred, Felicia and Lynette. And finally, 7 teens who are still to age up to a young adult. They are from the left, Sharonda, Megan, Latoya, Kendall, Joni, Constance and Kobe. Each of Jerry's children got an imaginary friend at birth, and since the town was so underpopulated, I decided to get them to make each of their imaginary friends real, and I gave the imaginary friends a really major makeover, and the ones that have been made real so far have all been put out to live in the town as townies. And this is all of the imaginary friends that have so far been made real. There will eventually be 15 of them, but at this point I think we've only got 7 that have been made real so far. And the game has started matching some of them up with spouses from the Sims that were already in the world and unattached. Claudette Cameron is a sim I made and recently added to the world. Brian Holden was Javon's imaginary friend made real, and the game has paired them up, and they are now living together as a couple. Edith Laffey has been in the game since the beginning, but so far she's not been matched with anyone, although I do believe she's about to be paired up with one of the imaginary friends made real. Elsa Blackburn is the genie that Robbie let out of the bottle, and ever since then she's been trying to get into a relationship with Javon and causing trouble between Javon and Gwen. I really do hope she leaves them alone now that they're married. Dave Webb and Ursula Gammon have been in the game since the beginning, and the game paired them up ages ago. So far they've had 2 children together, Fernando and Robbie. Ursula and Fernando are both witches. I'm not sure if Robbie has inherited that occult or not yet. Ursula was previously living in a small house with the 2 children, while Dave was living in Tony McLean's place. I've now moved Dave in with Ursula and the children and moved them to a house in the same street as Javon and Gwen. So when Javon and Gwen start having babies, they will have some playmates living just across the street from them. Pauline Holden is the most recently made real of the imaginary friends. She was the imaginary friend of Felicia, and she's been moved out to a house that came with the world, and it should be quite comfortable for her. It's a similar house to what most of the other imaginary friends are being moved into. Pauline is a professional writer, and she appears to be quite prolific, so I expect her to get to the top of that career, which is her lifetime wish. Yolanda Mills and Ted Fields have been in the game since the beginning. They were in Tony McLean's place, but now they've moved out to their own home because the game has turned them into a couple. Zach Paulson and Fiona Clark have been in the game since the beginning as singles, but the game has recently paired them up as a couple, and again I've moved them into their own home together. Colin Holden was Alicia's imaginary friend. He's joined the athletic career and is on his way to get his lifetime wish of superstar athlete. Bill Richards has the irresistible trait, and he caused some commotion in the main household before he was moved out rather smartly. He was Gwen's imaginary friend. Byron was Wilfred's imaginary friend, and although he's single at the moment, I have seen what happens in the future, and he ends up with that red-headed Edith that we saw earlier. Jake is Robbie's imaginary friend made real. Robbie is about to marry Candice later in this episode. And finally, Josie is Lynette's imaginary friend made real. Josie is mean-spirited. Del Douglas was the new sim made specially to allow me to unpack the packed sims that I moved from the original game to the new save. And this is Del's apartment. If the game doesn't match her up with somebody else, she could possibly be a future spouse for one of the sims in the Holden family. Not everybody went directly home after the wedding. I came across Dennis, who was supposed to be behaving himself because he's going to marry Alicia shortly. But I entertained myself by watching him play the machines at the casino. He had mixed luck, and his reactions were priceless. He vigorously celebrated his wins. And equally vigorously reacted to his losses. Mostly he just lived in anticipation. This is going to be the big one. I'm going to win this time. And he did. But it was only a little win that time. Barely got anything. He probably got back what he'd spent so far, but that's about it. But he wasn't going to give up. The machine was still there and he still had money in his pocket. Is this going to be another big win? No, he lost. Oh, yes, he didn't like that, did he? That machine, I wonder if it still works. He must have got something out of it when he kicked it. This is going to be the big win, is it? Win, 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 win. No, he lost again. At least he didn't kick the machine this time. Just shook his fist at it. Let him have one more go and then we'll leave him to it. Can't stay here all night and watch him lose money at the gambling machines. In another part of town, Demetria was a sad, lone figure in a bar. The only others there were the mixologist and the bouncer, and she wasn't even having a drink. I think she is probably lonely. She's just seen her eldest brother happily married to Gwen, and she's going to miss them because they've been in the household with her for a long time, and she doesn't even have a boyfriend. This world is so small that there are no eligible sims in the world for her, and she's just thinking about, is she ever going to be happily married? What she doesn't realise is I've already got one made for her, and he's just waiting in my library to be added to the household as soon as there's space for him. So she has got a bright future ahead of her. She just doesn't know it yet. Back at home the next morning, Candice is working on a few more skills. Here she is trying to learn something about making potions and the chemistry table. This will improve her logic skill. She's really just making potions for the sake of making potions because she's never had an imaginary friend, so she doesn't need to make the potion to get her imaginary friend made real. The teens in the household are running off to catch the school bus because it's a school day, and some of the other Sims are just getting up to their usual activities. Suddenly, Candice discovered the mood enhancer potion. If she was to drink that, it would give her the brightened day moodlet for 4 hours. Candice wandered down to the garden to help the others out with a bit of gardening and to pick up a bit more gardening skill. And while she was doing it, she was contemplating her future. She knew she was supposed to be in this household to get married to Robbie, and she knew that she was about to leave for a vacation with just Robbie and herself, just the two of them alone, to see if they were compatible and might be prepared to get married one day. She wasn't too sure about Robbie. He never seemed to be very interested in her. She'd been in the household for a long time already, and nothing much was happening. Robbie didn't really seem very interested in her, and she was desperate to get married and have babies because she needs to have 5 babies and raise them to teens to get her lifetime wish. And she was almost at the point where she was thinking of moving on to another town to see if she could find some brighter prospects for her future. And Lynette, of course, had her own issues. She also wanted to have her babies, and there was no husband in sight. What she didn't realise is she's in the next in line, and as soon as Candice and Robbie move out, whether it be by marriage to each other or Candice just leaving town and Robbie moving out to become an eternal bachelor, but once they left the house, there would be 2 more spots available, and Lynette's future spouse would be able to move in, and she would meet him and they would start developing their relationship. Meanwhile, Dennis had managed to come home at some stage during the wee hours of the morning and had very quietly taken up painting. His job is in the painting career, and he's trying to get to the top of that career, but he hasn't made it yet, and it's a perfect way for him to hide it quietly and paint. Eventually, Candice was surprised to discover that Robbie did actually mean to take her with him on his vacation, so off they went. They were both surprised when they found themselves arrived in a small, inconspicuous little world called Cornucopia. It wasn't where either of them had expected to be. They rented a comfortable house, and Candice quickly and quietly found herself watching endless cooking channel on the TV. She is, after all, a couch potato and was quite content if she could do that for their entire holiday together. Meanwhile, Robbie had pulled out his guitar again. He was just so addicted to music. He knew that he needed to marry Candice, but he was having difficulty dragging himself away from the guitar. Candice was perfect in her own way because she was always quite happy to just sit and watch TV. I suppose so long as they got along well enough to be able to make lots of babies, the marriage would work perfectly for both of them. You've just got to stop playing that guitar enough on this vacation to convince Candice that they had some hope of making it together. Now, it just so happens that Robbie was a couch potato too, so he put his guitar away and he went in to watch TV with Candice, and they enjoyed some quiet time together. Candice found herself very happily in Robbie's arms, and she even forgot to watch the TV for a while. It was such a new sensation for her to have some of Robbie's interest focused on her. It hadn't happened before. Didn't last long though. They soon decided that they'd really rather concentrate on the TV. They soon realised that they couldn't just sit there watching the TV and ignoring each other, and they soon developed quite an interesting conversation. They found that they really did enjoy each other's company. They seemed to have quite a lot in common, especially being couch potatoes. They both knew that they were expected to get married and have babies together, so they started discussing marriage plans, and they discovered that they both wanted at least 5 children. So that was something else they had in common. Robbie cooked some grilled cheese sandwiches, and after they had eaten them, he got his guitar out, and Candice enjoyed listening. Candice was beginning to see that there might be some hope for them to actually have a relationship, and it would be very nice to start out now rather than to have to go to another world and try to find some other man and have babies with. She thought it would be a good idea to learn to enjoy listening to his music. The next day they decided to go exploring around the world, and they came across a festival grounds. It was just like the festival grounds they had at home in Cake Island. Robbie soon got busy playing guitar for tips, and Candice stood and watched him. He needed an audience, but first she had an ice to eat and cool down. It's hot business standing in the sun watching someone play the guitar. This world didn't seem to have any residents, or at least not very many, and nobody came to watch Robbie play the guitar, so he didn't make any money when he played for tips. So they soon decided to move on. It was a skating rink that was invitingly close by, and neither of them knew how to skate, but they thought it was a great opportunity for them to learn without any of their family members or friends there to watch on and laugh at their lack of skill. They enjoyed skating for hours until Robbie got off and decided to try to kick a ball at the soccer net. What they hadn't realised was that night was the night of the zombies. But the zombies didn't bother them. They were accustomed to zombies back in Cake Island as well. Robbie started to head around the grounds picking flowers. He was aware that they were going to need some money when they finally moved out together, and they obviously were going to move out together, or so he hoped. So while Candice skated and kept building her skating skills, Robbie walked around the entire lot looking for all of the wildflowers he could find. Some of them were quite valuable. As long as he sold them before midnight, all would be good. Any flowers he had in his pocket at midnight would reduce in value instantly by quite a lot. So he always had to make sure that he had sold them before midnight. They woke up early the next morning and went fishing. Candice mentioned to Robbie that she had never been fishing and had absolutely no fishing skill whatsoever. And Robbie admitted that his fishing skill wasn't all that high either. So they headed for a little fishing hole that they had found. And there was a gnome sitting right at the top of the hill in the middle of the water hole. And they spent most of that day just fishing, trying to get their fishing skills up high enough so they'd be able to read all of the fishing bait books. Later that afternoon, they went exploring through the town, and for some reason they ended up in the front of the school grounds. And they decided it was time for a bit of flirting. So they did a little bit of kissing and a little bit of holding hands and some more talking and staring into each other's eyes and a bit of massaging. This relationship is definitely going somewhere, because with the Sims, massaging is a big thing. The children started emerging from school, but the couple didn't notice them. They were just in their own world. Let's whisper in the ear. Big red hearts, just lots more flirting. I wonder where this is going to end up. Hand holding. I think they're becoming gradually overcome with emotion. So they whip out their tablet and a book to read and just stand there. Need to take a little break from all the romance. And then Robbie decides it's time to serenade Candice. So he whips out his guitar and she walks to stand and watch him and enjoy the music as he serenades her. It's all so romantic. Their relationship has certainly taken a turn for the better, and we thought they were going to be just sitting in the chairs watching TV the whole vacation. Eventually it was time to put the guitar away, and Candice was all overcome with the wonder of being serenaded by her Robbie. She was just so excited. Oh, it's time for a romantic photo together. Looks like one of the teachers emerging from the school now. It's a wonder they don't get told to leave the premises. Massage time. I wonder would they even notice if they were ordered off the property. For a Sim, the massage is about the most romantic thing you can do. Lots of hand holding. Another romantic photo together. Things are going ahead in leaps and bounds here. They decide to leave the school and go and have a roller coaster ride at the roller coaster theme park. This is a roller coaster lot that I built, and it's in my studio on the Sims 3 Exchange if you are interested. Of course, it requires a lot of store content, including the roller coaster itself. They can have a wonderful view of the scenery when they get up high, but I'm not sure they're interested in the scenery. Lots of loops, the loops, up they go. Night is falling and the lights are coming on. Jumped over the shark. Ooh. Oh, down you go. Around the final big loop-the-loop. And then the ride is over. I had to get in close when they got off just in case. When Sims get off a roller coaster ride, sometimes one or more of them will throw up. I didn't want to miss that. They're off. Nobody disgraced themselves by being sick. Candice knows exactly what she wants. There's a bar downstairs in that same building, and she wants them to have a meal together and then some romantic dancing. This is a place where Robbie could come and perform if they ever visit this world again, because there's a stage at the other end of the room and instruments that any sim can come up and play. Paparazzi are annoying them wherever they go, of course. Candice has got babies on her mind. She's not going to let Robbie out of her sight while she's got him cooperating with her. Things are going very well, she thinks. She's got him just where she wants him. See, there's the stage. We don't have to have a live band. We can just turn on the music and dance on the dance floor. We might get into a little bit of slow dancing. I think she's hoping that he will do some slow dancing with her rather than head up to the stage and choose one of the instruments to play.
Whip that Java dog!
Yes, that's it. Slow dancing coming up, even if the paparazzi are there recording every second of every move they make. Oh dear, Candice is standing on his toes. But they are slow dancing. Very romantic. I guess she will eventually improve. We'll leave them to dance the night away as they learn romantic things might be. Oh, dip kiss. You never know what sort of romance they're going to be able to get up to if they just keep exploring this wonderful place. It's certainly very romantic for them. They're both new to this slow dancing thing. There's a certain amount of stepping on the other's toes, but they eventually get the hang of it. Eventually, they decide it's time to move on and see what else they can find outside, away from the dancing. You never know what they might find. On the ground floor, they walked through a cafe and there was a barista there, and there was also a Christmas tree. That's because when I built this roller coaster lot, it was Christmas Day a few years ago, and I was trying to make it like an Australian Christmas, because in Australia Christmas is hot and Australians love to go to the beach for their Christmas celebrations. There's a shop up at the top of the entrance gates, and Candice wandered up there to see what she could buy. She bought a couple of items, including a purple doll that you will see displayed in the main house back in Cake Island eventually. She will leave it with Jerry. Ends up on one of the coffee tables. See the purple doll? She bought that. That's the Savvy Seller set in action there, where Sims can buy things from a shop. There's a love inspector. I think this couple are going to try to work out if their love is likely to endure or if it's just a flash in the pan. They'll have to just take note of what the love inspector says. Love inspector declares, "You two have found true love. Hang on to each other." Now that's got to be a sign. The wishing well is over there and there's fairies flittering above it. There's obviously a tree of prosperity here somewhere on this lot. The wishing well came with lucky palms, and the tree of prosperity came with lunar lakes, and if you've got them both on the same lot, the wishing well gets pixies or sometimes fireflies at night. Now Robbie is tired and he needs to go home and go to bed, but a sim, when there is a wishing well on a lot, will generally wish for happiness at the wishing well rather than go to sleep in bed, which is really annoying a lot of the time. But it's time this pair went home and had a sleep and start again fresh tomorrow. Next morning, the paparazzi are standing guard outside their house. Robbie's reading they've decided that since they're going to set up a home together permanently, that it's time they learned as many recipes and as much about fishing bait as they can possibly do. They've still got a few days left for their vacation, and they've decided to devote those remaining days to reading recipes and fishing bait books. When Robbie had finished reading his recipe, he got up and made some breakfast for himself and walked out to join Candice. By then, of course, she'd started reading a recipe that she needed to learn. This is the house that they've been renting while they've been on vacation. It's very well appointed and there's everything they could possibly need inside, but they can't stay there forever. They need to go back to Cake Island shortly. And of course, the paparazzi are still hanging around out the front. It turns out that neither of them had a sufficiently high fishing skill to be able to read all of the fishing books. So they went fishing again at night, hoping the paparazzi wouldn't find them. But the wild horses found them. When they got home, they decided that they would just love to sit down together and watch the stars together. And that's what they did for absolutely ages. They were just so happy in each other's company. Afterwards, they went inside and it was time for another romantic photo together. And then Robbie did something that Candice was totally unprepared for. He got down on one knee with a beautiful diamond ring and asked her to marry him. And of course, she was overcome with excitement and she said yes. So now all we need is a wedding. Meanwhile, we'll just have lots of big hugs and cuddles. They had a little talk about it. When and where was the wedding going to be? And they decided, why not here and now? So they went out to the beach and they had a private wedding. They exchanged rings and then they were husband and wife together. And then they had a big kiss. Isn't that wonderful? So romantic. Didn't expect this to happen so quickly with this pair. They were so unsure of themselves and each other when they first arrived here. And Robbie, after he'd kissed his new wife, he walked off just a little distance and turned around and surprised her because he got his guitar out and he played her a special song, his serenade for her, and she was just so happy to listen to his beautiful music. And when the song was finished, he put his guitar down and she thanked him beautifully for the serenade. And then of course they had to have another big kiss. So that will be the end of this episode. They are married, but they're not home yet. We'll send them back to Cake Island in the next episode. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed and would like to see the next episode, it might be an idea to subscribe now. But otherwise, just thank you for watching. Bye bye for now and happy simming.